Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Brian Michaels from Digital Momentum, and today I want to begin with a simple observation. Education has always evolved, from chalkboards to whiteboards, from overhead projectors to smartboards, from encyclopedias to Google. Every generation of educators has been asked to adapt to new tools while staying true to the mission of helping students learn. Today, we find ourselves standing at another one of those defining moments: artificial intelligence. Now, AI isn't a futuristic concept anymore. It isn't something that we'll have to think about 5 years from now. It's already here. Our students are using it, our teachers are exploring it, universities are embracing it, employers are expecting it. The question is no longer whether AI belongs in education. The question is this: how do we lead it responsibly? That's why we're here today. Digital Momentum isn't simply about artificial intelligence. It's about preparing today's learners for tomorrow's world without losing sight of what has always made education meaningful. Because no matter how advanced technology becomes, relationships will always matter. Integrity will always matter. Teachers will always matter. Now, throughout today's presentation, I want to challenge us to think beyond software and technology. Instead, let's think about people. Because technology changes every single year, but the impact of a great educator lasts a lifetime. Think about it for a moment. Even you as educators, think about that lasting educator that made a difference to you. It was possibly that one teacher that made a huge enough difference that you said, I'm going to be a teacher someday, whatever the case might be. Let me leave you with a momentum moment. Technology may shape the classroom, but teachers shape lives. I'd like to begin today with a quick question. How many of you have used some form of AI during the last month? Okay. Now, keep your hand up if you believe at least one of your students has used AI this week. Exactly. That's why today's conversation matters. Now, before we talk about AI itself, let's begin with something even more important: why this conversation matters in the first place. Every educational initiative should begin by answering one important question, and that is why. Why should we invest our time, energy, and attention into this topic? Well, let's start right there. When I first began researching artificial intelligence in education, I expected to find conversations centered around technology. Instead, I discovered something much, much bigger. Every major organization, from UNESCO to the United States Department of Education, kept returning to the same conclusion. This isn't really about computers. It's about leadership. AI has the potential to personalize learning. It can help teachers create lessons more efficiently. It can provide immediate feedback to students. It can increase accessibility for learners who need additional support. Those are incredible opportunities. But every opportunity also comes with responsibility. Who teaches students how to use AI ethically? There's not one teacher in the school these days that just says AI instructor. Who protects student privacy? It's up to all of us in regards to that moment. Who ensures AI strengthens critical thinking instead of replacing it? The answer has never, ever been software. The answer has always been you, educators, me, educator. That's why Digital Momentum exists. Not to convince schools to adopt AI, but to help schools lead AI responsibly. Our responsibility isn't simply preparing students to use technology. Our responsibility is preparing students to think, evaluate, collaborate, communicate, and solve problems in a world where AI will become increasingly common. Technology may continue to evolve, but our mission remains exactly the same: helping students become successful learners and successful people. Here's another one of your momentum moments. The goal isn't to prepare students for AI. The goal is to prepare students to thrive in an AI-powered world. Think about the students sitting in your classroom today. What careers will exist 10 years from now that don't exist today? How about let's close the gap a little bit more. Let's close it in. What about the next 5 years? AI is expanding so rapidly. And that's the future that we're preparing them for today, right now. And we could close the gap even more. Let's say 2.5 years from now. So, if this truly is one of the biggest educational shifts of our generation, the question is this: what should we expect to learn today? Well, let's talk about today's learning outcomes. Whenever we gather for professional learning, I think that it's important to know where we're headed. So let me share what success looks like by the end of today's session. My goal today isn't to turn anyone into an AI expert. In fact, I don't even think that's necessary. Instead, I want each of us to leave with confidence. Confidence to understand what exactly AI is, confidence to recognize both its benefits and its challenges, confidence to ask better questions, and confidence to begin implementing AI responsibly within our own classrooms and our schools. We'll explore practical examples. We'll discuss concerns openly. We'll also examine ethical considerations. But most importantly, we'll talk about leadership. Because responsible innovation doesn't happen accidentally. It happens intentionally. If by the end of today you leave feeling more informed, more prepared, and more confident than when you arrived, then we've exactly accomplished what we set out to do today. Let's get another momentum moment. Confidence comes from understanding. Leadership comes from applying that understanding with purpose. As we go through today's session, I'd encourage you to think about one simple question. What's one thing I can take back to my classroom or campus tomorrow? Sometimes one practical idea creates more momentum than 100 theoretical ones. Before we can explore how AI fits into education, let's make sure we're all working from the same understanding of what artificial intelligence actually is. So before we can discuss how AI fits into education, we need to answer a very basic but very important question. What exactly is artificial intelligence? Because if you ask 10 different people, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. I can almost guarantee. Some people think robots, I am your robot. Others think ChatGPT. Whoa! Some think computers taking over the entire world. And some are probably thinking, Brian, I'm just trying to survive this school year. I tell you what, I do understand. As an educator, I know where you're at. The good news is artificial intelligence isn't nearly as mysterious as people sometimes make it sound. At its core, artificial intelligence is simply technology designed to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. It can recognize patterns, understand languages, generate ideas, summarize information, organize data, and even help solve problems. But here's what I really want everyone to understand. AI doesn't think. It predicts. When you type a prompt into ChatGPT or another AI platform that you might use, it isn't having a conversation like another human being. It's making incredibly sophisticated predictions based on patterns it has learned from enormous amounts of data. Think about your GPS, for instance. I always love doing this exercise with students in the classroom because 9 times out of 10, not many students can actually read a road map these days. It's a seriously sad statistic. But again, let's go ahead and think back to your GPS. Now, when you leave school every afternoon, your phone already knows where you're probably headed. Why? Because it's learned your habits. AI works in a very similar way. It recognizes patterns. Then it predicts the best response. That's incredibly powerful. But it's also why AI sometimes gets things completely wrong, which is why human judgment remains absolutely essential. In education, AI should never become the teacher. It should become another instructional tool. It's another tool for your tool belt. And who does not like tools? Just like calculations didn't eliminate math teachers and Google didn't eliminate librarians, AI won't eliminate educators. It will not. It will not replace human intelligence. Instead, it has the potential to remove repetitive tasks so teachers can spend more time doing what only humans can do: building relationships. Did you hear that? One more time. Building relationships, encouraging students, creating that belonging in your classroom, in your school. It's all about that culture. And those things, no algorithm in the world can replace. Here's another momentum moments. Artificial intelligence predicts information, but great teachers inspire transformation. I'd like everyone to think about this for just a moment. How many repetitive tasks do you do every single week? Okay, let's just do a quick checklist. Lesson plans, emails, rubrics. You gotta love the parent communication. Now imagine if AI saved you just 30 minutes every single day. What would you do with that extra time? Would you spend it building stronger relationship with students? Providing better feedback? Planning more engaging lessons? That's where AI has the greatest value. Not replacing teachers, restoring teachers' time. Time is something that we cannot buy. We all have the exact same 24 hours in a single day. But we need to restore that time. So now that we understand what AI actually is, let's talk about where it's already showing up. Whether we realize it or not, artificial intelligence has already entered education. The question isn't whether it's coming. The question is, are we going to lead it or simply react to it? I sometimes hear educators say, AI isn't really happening in my classroom. And my response is usually, it probably already is. Students are using AI to brainstorm, to study, to organize notes, to ask questions they may not ask in class. And some are actually using it appropriately, while others, well, maybe not so appropriately. And that's exactly why schools need leadership. When used responsibly, AI can become one of the most effective teaching assistants we've ever had. Imagine asking AI to create 3 versions of your lesson for tomorrow. One for students needing intervention, one for grade level learners, and one for advanced students. Now imagine writing a parent newsletter in 30 seconds instead of 30 minutes. Imagine creating a rubric, discussion questions, and exit ticket before your morning coffee even gets cold. That's not science fiction. That is today. But here's the important distinction. The AI isn't teaching. The teacher is. You are. I am. AI can simply give us more time to do what matters most. Again, and that's the teaching aspect. As educators, we don't need to compete with technology. We need to leverage technology because students still need that encouragement. They still need accountability. They still need someone who believes in them. AI cannot replace the smile that a teacher gives a struggling student when they're having a bad day. It cannot recognize when a child is quietly hurting. It cannot celebrate the excitement in a student's eyes when something finally clicks. That's why I believe that education's future isn't less human. It's more human, supported by smarter tools. And here's another momentum moment. AI may change how we teach, but it should never change why we teach. I'd love to hear from a few of you. So, what is one task that you gladly let AI help you with for tomorrow morning? How about this? I hear a couple people mumbling and a couple people talking with their partners. Some people said lesson plans. Yes, ideal. Emails, creating assessments. That's always a great one. And of course, like we mentioned earlier, parent communication. Now, as I was listening, there are no wrong answers because the goal isn't replacing our expertise. It's reducing our workload. Isn't it interesting that almost every answer involves saving time? Just as we were talking about those redundant emails that sometimes we do have to do, but they're the same emails. The lesson planning, creating assessments, all of those things, those are all time consuming. And so if they are so repetitive, they can actually save time by utilizing an AI tool. And that's exactly the point. AI gives us back our most valuable resource, time. Remember, I said in a 24-hour period, we all have the same 24 hours and the same 60 minutes in each hour. And what we choose to do with that time will determine whether AI becomes transformational or merely convenient. Here's another momentum moment. Technology gives us efficiency. Relationships give us impact. Great schools need both. Now that we've seen where AI is already making an impact, let's explore something every educator wants to know. What are the actual benefits? And are they worth embracing? So now that we've talked about what AI is, we've seen where it's already showing up. Now the next question becomes, is it actually worth it? Because educators have seen plenty of initiatives come and go. We've all sat through presentations that promise to change everything. So let's look beyond the hype. Let's talk about the real benefits of artificial intelligence. So I want you to imagine something with me. It's 8 o'clock at night. You've already taught all day long. You've answered emails, graded assignments, made parent phone calls, attended meetings, and now you're sitting at your kitchen table trying to create tomorrow's lesson. How many of us have been there? Yep, I see you. Most definitely. Yep, you too. Every educator knows that feeling. Now imagine having a teaching assistant sitting right beside you. Not another teacher, not another administrator, just someone who could organize your ideas as you start spinning them out. Draft a rubric, create discussion questions, suggest differentiated activities, or helps rewrite an email in a more professional tone. Well, that's where artificial intelligence shines. It doesn't replace our expertise. It removes repetitive work. Think about what we could do with that extra time. It always goes back to that time. Well, more conversations with students can be had, better feedback on the spot. How about more creative lessons, more collaboration? Those are the real benefits. AI also opens doors for students. A struggling reader can receive simplified text. An English learner can translate directions. A student preparing for an exam can receive additional practice questions instantly. Accessibility becomes more achievable. Differentiation becomes more manageable. Personalization becomes more realistic. But perhaps the greatest benefit isn't efficiency, it's capacity. AI gives educators more capacity to focus on what matters most. Again, it's people. Here's another momentum moment. The greatest benefit of AI isn't saving teachers time, it's giving teachers more time to change lives. Let's reflect back. Why did we become teachers? Because that's the part we love, is to teach. Every innovation creates opportunity, but every innovation also creates responsibility. I believe every honest conversation about artificial intelligence has to include both sides. Because if we only discuss the benefits, we're not leading, we're selling. And leadership requires honesty. Artificial intelligence is incredibly powerful, but it isn't perfect. Let's start with something we've probably all experienced. Have you ever asked AI a question? Okay, now let's just go ahead and spin it out there and let's go ahead and say, have you ever asked Google a question? Yep, that's AI. Have you ever asked Siri a question? Yep, AI. And it answered you with complete confidence. Only to discover, here's the kicker, only to discover later that it was completely wrong. That's what's called an AI hallucination. I know, tricky language there, but it's kind of what it is. And yes, that's actually an actual technical term. AI can generate information that sounds incredibly believable, but simply isn't true. That's why verification is no longer optional. It has to be a part of the process. Critical thinking has become one of the most important skills that we can teach. Then there's academic integrity. Students can now have access to tools capable of writing essays, generating code, even solving math problems. So our challenge isn't simply catching misuse, it's redesigning learning so students see value in doing the thinking themselves. Now, next comes privacy. And as educators, we are trusted with sensitive information. Students' names, grades, behaviors, accommodations, those belong to our students. They should never be entered into public AI systems without district approval. Finally, bias. This could be a big one as well. Artificial intelligence learns from human-created data. If that data contains bias, AI may repeat it, and most often does, which means our professional judgment becomes even more valuable. AI doesn't remove the need for teachers. It increases the need for thoughtful teachers. Here's another momentum moment. Trust AI enough to use it, never enough to stop thinking. I'd like to ask a quick question. How many of you have ever Googled something? Anything? I know almost 99.9% of you in here have done exactly that. Now, here's the kicker. Not only did you check it out on Google, but you discovered later that the first answer was not the best answer. Yep, exactly. What's even funnier is when you're actually grading those papers and you know exactly where they got the answer from, and they use probably AI. We've always taught students to evaluate information, and AI doesn't change that. It simply raises the stakes. Here's another momentum moment. Artificial intelligence makes information easier to find. Wisdom still belongs to people. So we've talked about both opportunities and concerns. So I've shared a lot of ideas over the last few minutes, and now it's your turn to give a little bit of feedback. Now, one of the things that I love most about education is this. No single classroom looks exactly alike. Some of you might teach English, others math, science. Hey, all about the CTE people in the house. That's kind of my world. Special education, elementary, secondary, administration, every one of us sees AI through a different lens. And that's actually a strength because responsible implementation requires multiple perspectives. So for the next few minutes, I'd like you to discuss two simple questions. Where do you see the greatest opportunity? Yes, that's one. Where do you see the greatest opportunity? And number two, what concerns you the most? Number two, what concerns you the most? Now, there aren't right answers. There are no wrong answers. And this isn't about convincing anyone of anything in here today. It's about beginning and starting the conversation. Because innovation grows best when people feel heard. Now, take about 5 minutes and discuss at your table. Then I want you to choose one spokesperson and be prepared to share one opportunity, one concern, and one practical solution. Now I'm going to be just walking around the room very quickly and just kind of checking things out, listening a little bit, and also going to inquire you just to encourage you a little bit, just to kind of share amongst your table yourself, because I want to hear some really exciting answers. Now we're going to shuffle on back. Most people have already discussed it. Most people are ready to go. So let's hear a few of the ideas. Now, did you notice something? Almost every concern someone mentioned, it could be addressed through leadership, through policies, professional learning. Some people were talking about cheating. Some people were talking about getting answers. That's one and the same, basically, but you get my point. So we also have these things about professional learning, communication, and the big one, expectations. If we tell them what we expect, it's much better. And that tells me something that's very encouraging. The biggest challenge isn't artificial intelligence. It's preparing people to use it responsibly. That is the big R word for today, responsibly. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Here's another momentum moment. Innovation begins with conversation. Transformation begins with leadership. So if leadership really is the difference between successful implementation and failed implementation, let's talk about why leadership matters. So after hearing all these great discussions, one theme probably kept surfacing among your tables. Policies, expectations, training, support, trust, that's a big issue. Now, none of those things are created by artificial intelligence. They're created by leadership. And that's why I believe that this next section is the heart of the entire presentation. When I first began developing digital momentum, I kept asking myself one question. What separates schools that successfully embrace innovation from those that struggle? It isn't money. It isn't technology. It isn't even experience. It's leadership. So think about every successful initiative that your campus has ever implemented, whether it was a new curriculum, a new grading system, a new instructional framework, or even something as simple as a change in attendance procedures. Success never depended on the program itself. Success depended on how people led the change. Artificial intelligence is no different. Technology doesn't transform schools, people do. Leadership creates the vision. Leadership builds trust. Leadership removes fear. Leadership answers questions before frustration becomes resistance. I'm telling you, one of the biggest mistakes schools can make is introducing AI by simply saying, here's a new tool, go use it. No, that is not implementation. That's abandonment. And it's already happened. We've seen it. If you take someone, a student, for instance, and you take them through, for instance, Google Suite, which most school districts will use to some point, but if you actually take them through and ask them to use each one of the tools inside G Suite, like drafting a professional email, or how about balancing budgets, or how about organizing a calendar, how about all of those things? Teachers deserve training. Students deserve guidance. And parents deserve communication. Administrators deserve a clear roadmap. That's exactly why digital momentum exists, because AI implementation isn't an IT project. It's a leadership initiative. When leaders communicate clearly, support consistently, and model responsible use, innovation becomes something people embrace instead of fear. Here's another momentum moment. Technology may start the conversation. Leadership determines the outcome. I'd like you to think back over your own career. Now, whether you've been teaching for a year, maybe 5 years, maybe 15. There's a couple of veterans in the back. I love you guys. 25 plus years teaching. What made it successful? Now think of one that failed. Was it really the initiative that failed, or was it the implementation of the initiative? Well, most of the time, the answer is leadership. So if leadership is the foundation, what exactly are we leading people toward? Well, I'd like to introduce the framework that inspired this project and this initiative. So everything we've discussed so far has been building to this particular moment. Because throughout my research, I actually realized something. Schools don't need another AI tool. They need a framework for using AI tools. Digital Momentum isn't just another app, it isn't another software platform, and it certainly isn't another educational trend. Digital Momentum is a leadership framework. It's designed to help districts move from curiosity to confidence, from experimentation to intentional implementation, from reacting to leading. As educators, we've seen technology initiatives come and go. Some created excitement, yay! Others created frustration. Many disappeared after only a few years. Why? Because they focused on technology first, people second. Digital Momentum intentionally reverses that order. We are going to think people first, purpose always, technology with intention. This framework recognizes something incredibly important. Artificial intelligence isn't replacing education. It's expanding what's possible within education. When teachers receive professional learning, when students understand digital citizenship, when administrators establish clear expectations, innovation becomes sustainable. That isn't digital momentum because of the software. It's digital momentum because people begin moving together toward a shared vision. That's where momentum comes from. Here's another momentum moment. Momentum isn't created by technology. Momentum is created when people move together toward a common purpose. I'd like you to imagine your campus 1 year from today. Teachers feel confident using AI. Students understand responsible use. Parents know what's happening. Administrators have clear expectations. That's not wishful thinking. That's intentional leadership. So, if digital momentum is the framework, let's begin by looking at its vision. Every successful organization begins with a vision because vision answers one question. Where are we going? I've always believed that vision should inspire people. It should paint a picture of what's possible, not simply describe today's reality. The vision of digital momentum is intentionally simple: to create future-ready schools where artificial intelligence enhances teaching, enriches learning, and prepares every student to thrive. Notice something important? The vision doesn't mention replacing teachers. It doesn't talk about automation. It doesn't celebrate technology for technology's sake. Instead, it celebrates people. Teachers growing professionally. Students become ethical digital citizens. Schools creating opportunities that didn't exist before. Think about it. When the internet came to be and it was implemented in schools, it had to take leadership roles to actually be utilized properly. And now schools today can hardly function without the internet being present. I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. We're going to take both the good and the bad. But one of my favorite leadership quotes says, if you want people to build a ship, don't assign them tasks. Inspire them to long for the sea. Vision does exactly that. Vision gives people something worth building together, and that's the kind of future that I believe education deserves. Here's a momentum moment. Vision doesn't tell people where they are. Vision reminds them where they're capable of going. Okay, everybody bust out your magic wand. Use your pen, your pencil, whatever you have. If you could wave your magic wand, What would AI allow your campus to accomplish over the next 5 years? I want you to just take a moment and picture that future. Okay, you locked in. Got your picture, adding some new colors. Very good. It's looking nice, right? Well, vision tells us where we're going. Mission explains how we'll get there. So every vision needs action, and that's where mission comes in. Our mission with Digital Momentum is incredibly straightforward. We exist to prepare educators and students to thrive in an AI-driven world. Notice I didn't say survive. I said thrive. There's a huge difference. Thriving means confidence, purpose, preparedness. It means giving teachers practical tools, not more stress. It means giving administrators leadership strategies, not more uncertainty. It means giving students ethical foundations, not just technical skills. Our mission is grounded in 3 beliefs. First, professional learning should empower educators. Second, innovation should always be guided by ethics. Third, technology should strengthen human relationships, never replace them. If every decision we make supports those 3 ideas, we'll remain focused on what matters most. Here's a momentum moment. Our mission isn't building better technology, it's building better opportunities through responsible technology. Ask yourself this question. If your students remembered only one thing about your classroom 5 years from now, what would it be? Would you want it to be the technology or the teacher who believed in them? That's the difference between tools and purpose. So now that we've established our mission, let's look at the 5 pillars that brings digital momentum to life. So I've shared a lot over the past few slides, but if you remember only one thing from this section, remember this. And by the way, it's a momentum moment. Technology creates possibilities. Leadership creates momentum. So far, we've talked about the why, we've talked about the vision, we've talked about the mission, but every successful framework needs structure. When I began developing digital momentum, I kept asking myself another question. If a district wanted to implement artificial intelligence responsibly tomorrow, where would they begin? Well, the answer becomes these 5 pillars that I'm about to get you. Yep, get your pen and paper ready. Just take notes on your computer. It's okay. Everything digital momentum stands for, everything we've discussed today, everything that I hope schools become can be found in these 5 principles. I want you to think of these 5 pillars as the foundation of a building. If even one pillar is missing, the structure becomes totally unstable. Schools cannot simply buy AI tools without educating teachers. We cannot equip classrooms without empowering students. We can't inspire innovation without ensuring responsibility. And each pillar depends on the others together. Each pillar depends on the others. And together, they create something much larger than technology. They create culture. And that's exactly why digital momentum is all about. Not changing software, changing culture. As we walk through each pillar, I don't want you to think about artificial intelligence. I want you to think about your individual campus, your teachers, your students, your leadership team, and ask yourself which pillar is already a strength, which pillar needs the most attention, because every school begins in a different place, but every great school can move forward. Here's another momentum moment. Technology may be the vehicle, but culture is the destination. As we explore these next 5 pillars, I'd encourage you to rate your campus silently from 1 to 5. 1, we're just getting started. Or 5, we're already living this thing out, living the dream. By the end of this section, you'll have a pretty clear picture of where your campus is and where it could go. Let's begin with the pillar that makes every other pillar possible: education. I believe every meaningful change in education begins the same way, not with technology, but with learning. When people hear the word education, most immediately think about students. Today, I want you to think about educators. One of the greatest mistakes organizations make is assuming teachers should automatically know how to use technology. Imagine introducing a brand new curriculum, handling everyone to log in and saying, "Good luck." Well, no, we would never do that. So why would we do it with artificial intelligence? Confidence grows through learning. The more teachers understand AI, the less intimidating it becomes. Professional learning creates confidence, and confidence creates innovation. Innovation creates momentum. Education isn't just about learning how to use ChatGPT or Claude or any of the other ones. It's learning how to ask better questions, how to recognize bias, how to verify information, how to model responsible digital citizenship. When educators continue learning, students naturally follow, because students rarely become what we tell them. They become what they observe. And that's why education is our first pillar. Everything else depends on it. Here's a momentum moment. Confident teachers create confident learners. Well, I'd like everyone to think back right now. Let's go back to the future, so to speak. I'd like everyone to think back. Think back to the question I asked you just a bit ago. Who was that teacher that inspired you the most? Whether they just inspired you in life or if they inspired you to actually be a teacher. What made them unforgettable? Well, chances are it wasn't because they knew the newest technology. It was because they never stopped learning. That's exactly who we want to become. I know for me, I am big time on learning. I strive to learn something new every day, whether it's a fun fact or whether it's something that I'm needing to learn. I strive to learn something new every day. Learning gives us confidence, but confidence alone isn't enough. People also need the right tools. You would never walk in to build a house without a hammer. You would never try to cut wood without a saw. You need the right tools. That leads us into pillar number 2. Knowledge without resources creates frustration. That's why our second pillar is equip. Have you ever attended an incredible professional development session and you walked out inspired? Only to return to your classroom and think, now what? What do I do? Where do I go? What do I do now? Well, we've all been there. Great ideas, no practical tools. Well, digital momentum is intentionally different. Our goal isn't simply to inspire teachers. Our goal is to equip teachers. Ready-to-use prompts, lesson ideas, templates, rubrics, communication tools, time-saving strategies. Because when educators have practical resources, innovation becomes sustainable. One of my favorite sayings is make the right thing the easy thing. That's exactly what this pillar does. It removes barriers, it builds confidence, and it gives teachers permission to spend less time creating paperwork and more time creating experiences. Here's a momentum moment. Great educators don't need more work. They need better tools. If we could wave that magic wand again, bust it back out, your pen, pencil, whatever, and you could place one AI resource into your classroom tomorrow, what would help you the most? Probably goes back to a couple of those things we talked about earlier: lesson planning, differentiation, assessment, parent communication. You knew that one was going to pop up, didn't you? I saw you laughing in the back. Well, your answer probably reveals where your biggest opportunity exists. Once educators are equipped, our focus naturally shifts to the people sitting in our classrooms every day, our students. I'd like to stop just for a moment. Notice something? The first two pillars have almost nothing to do with software. They're about people. They're about investing in educators before expecting transformation. Because if we get the people right, the technology tends to follow. Here's a momentum moment. When educators grow, students flourish. And now, let's talk about the heart of education, empowering students. So far, we focused on educators, we've talked about learning, we've talked about resources, and now I'd like to shift our attention to the reason that every one of us chose education in the first place. Our students. Well, because ultimately, digital momentum isn't about preparing students to use AI. It's about preparing students to lead in a world where AI will simply be part of everyday life. I often hear people ask, should students be allowed to use artificial intelligence? And honestly, I think that's the wrong question. The better question is, how do we teach students to use it responsibly? There's that R word again. Think about calculators. When calculators first entered classrooms, there was resistance. People worried students would never learn math. The same thing happened with the internet. Yep, remember that? I tell my students all the time I'm older than Google. Well, it all happened. And then, of course, smartphones. Yep, now it's AI. History has shown us something important. Technology doesn't eliminate learning. Poor instruction does. Our responsibility isn't to protect students from technology. Our responsibility is to prepare them to use it wisely. That means teaching them how to ask better questions, how to verify information, how to recognize misinformation, how to think critically, how to solve problems creatively, how to communicate ethically. Because those are the skills employers are looking for today, right now. Those are the skills that colleges expect as these students are coming out of our high schools. And those are the skills that AI can never replace. When students graduate, I don't want them leaving school knowing how to use ChatGPT. I want them leaving school knowing how to think, how to lead, how to create, how to collaborate. Because technology will continue to change every single day. Remember, that's the one thing in life that's constant. It's change. But just because technology will continue to change, character shouldn't. Now that's empowerment. Here's another momentum moment. We're not preparing students to compete with artificial intelligence. We're preparing them to accomplish more because of it. Okay, I'd like you to close your eyes right now. And I'd like you to picture one student. Maybe they're struggling academically. Maybe they're incredibly gifted. Maybe they're just quiet, don't speak up much. Maybe they are the class leader, sometimes the class clown. Now ask yourself, what skills will that student need 10 years from today? And we cut it down a little bit earlier. What about 5 years today? What about 2.5 years from today? Not software, skills. Those answers. And again, it goes back to critical thinking, communication, creativity, integrity. Those become our teaching priorities. It's not just how are we going to use it? Can I use ChatGPT? Can I use Claude? No. Critical thinking, communication, creativity, and integrity. Those are our priorities. Empowering students also comes with huge responsibility. As many people know, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, have been since I was a kid. And with great power comes great responsibility, as Peter Parker would say. Well, it's just like that. Empowering students also comes with responsibility. And that's exactly what our next pillar is about. And I believe this pillar may be one of the most important of them all, because without responsibility, innovation eventually becomes risk. When people hear the word ensure, most immediately think policies, rules, compliance. And yes, those things definitely do matter, but this pillar is much bigger than policy. It's about trust. Parents, trust us. Students, trust us. Communities, trust us. That trust is earned every single day. Artificial intelligence should never compromise it. Protecting student privacy is not optional. Academic integrity is not optional. Transparency is not optional. And fairness is not optional. Those aren't technology decisions. Those are leadership decisions. One of the things I appreciate most about the research from UNESCO and the U.S. Department of Education is that neither organization encourages schools to rush into AI. Instead, they consistently emphasize thoughtful implementation, purpose before platform, ethics before efficiency, people before technology. And I love that because that's exactly what this pillar represents. Ensuring that every decision reflects our values, not just our capabilities as educators. Just because AI can do something doesn't always mean it should. Responsible leadership means asking one more question. Is this best for students? And if the answer is yes, move forward confidently. If the answer is no, have the courage to wait. Here's another momentum moment. The most important AI filter isn't software, it's professional judgment. Okay, I've really asked you to put on your thinking caps today, but I'd like everyone right now to think about one word. Okay, here it is. No, don't guess your own. That one word is trust. How do we build trust with students, with parents, with one another? Now ask yourself, will this AI decision increase trust or will it decrease trust? That one question will guide better decisions than almost any policy ever could. So we've educated, we've equipped, we've empowered, we've ensured, and now comes my favorite pillar. Yes, this is a great one. One of my personal favorites, and that is to inspire. Everything we've talked about today leads to this final pillar because education has never simply been about information. It's always been about inspiration. When I think back over my own educational journey, I honestly don't remember every assignment. I don't remember every test. I don't remember every lecture. But I absolutely remember the teachers who believed in me, the ones who challenged me, the ones who inspired me to become more than I ever thought I could become. That's what this pillar is all about. Technology can inform, but teachers inspire. Artificial intelligence can generate ideas. Teachers ignite purpose. AI can create content all day long, but teachers create confidence. If digital momentum accomplishes nothing else, I hope it reminds you, me, educators, that we are still the greatest influence inside every single classroom. Students won't remember every prompt. They'll remember how you made them feel. They'll remember the encouragement, the grace, the challenge, the belief. That's why this pillar sits on the top of this framework, and that's why it's especially important to me. Because inspiration creates momentum. Momentum creates change, and change creates opportunity. I've said this throughout today's presentation that technology should never replace the human heart of education. And I hope after today that none of us will ever allow it to. Here's another momentum moment. Students may forget the technology you used, but they'll never forget the teacher who inspired them to believe in themselves. I'd like to end this section with one question. Who inspired you? And yes, I know we've asked that question several times today, but it's important to revisit it. Because just take a moment and picture that teacher. Now, without even realizing it, someone in your classroom may be telling the same story about you 10 years from now. That's why what we do matters. That's why you, as a teacher, an administrator, educator, CTE, that's why what we do matters. But if I could summarize everything that we've discussed into one sentence, it would be this. Okay, maybe a couple sentences. It would be this. Educate with purpose. Equip with confidence. Empower with vision. Ensure with integrity. Inspire with heart. Because that's digital momentum. So now that we've established the framework, let's get into the next section and let's explore what this actually looks like inside the classrooms. So we built the framework, we've established the 5 pillars. Now I'd like to answer the most important question of the day. What does success actually look like? Because success isn't measured by how many AI tools we purchase. Success is measured by how well we prepare students. I love the title of this slide because it captures everything digital momentum stands for. Future ready. Think about those 2 words. Future ready. Our responsibility isn't preparing students for yesterday's jobs. It isn't even preparing them for today's jobs. It's preparing them for careers, technologies, and opportunities that haven't even been invented yet. That's a tremendous responsibility. But it also reminds us that being future ready isn't about technology alone. It's about character, integrity, adaptability, communication, collaboration, critical thinking. Those are the timeless skills. Technology simply gives students another place to apply them. That's when our commitment has 3 parts. Ethical technology, because innovation without ethics eventually becomes harmful. Student success, because every decision we make should improve learning, not simply increase efficiency. And finally, future ready, because education has never been about helping students pass the next test. It's always been about preparing them for life. That's what digital momentum is really trying to accomplish. And here is another momentum moment. Preparing students for the future begins by preparing them to think, lead, and learn with integrity today. I'd like everyone to finish this sentence silently. I hope every graduate from our school leaves knowing how to blank. Here it is, one more time. I hope every graduate from our school leaves knowing how to blank. Think about your answer. And if your answer wasn't a piece of software, you're already thinking like a future-ready educator. So let's take this philosophy and move into one of the places where AI can make the biggest impact, our secondary classrooms. I believe high school represents one of the greatest opportunities for responsible AI implementation because this is where students begin preparing for college, careers, and life after graduation. Think about today's high school students. Many of them will graduate into careers where AI is not optional. Healthcare, business, engineering, marketing, agriculture, manufacturing, media, education. Virtually every profession is being influenced by artificial intelligence. So here's my question. If students are going to encounter AI in college and in the workplace, shouldn't they first learn how to use it responsibly? I believe the answer is yes. High school becomes the perfect environment to teach responsible AI use. Not cheating, learning. Not replacing effort, enhancing learning. Imagine students using AI to brainstorm ideas before writing an essay, creating interview questions for a podcast, developing marketing plans in a business class, generating coding ideas, practicing interview skills, analyzing historical perspectives. No, those aren't shortcuts. Those are authentic learning experiences. And our role shifts from just gatekeepers to guides, helping students understand not only what AI can do, but what it should do. Remember, we need to teach students what they can do instead of what just they can't do. Here's another momentum moment. The classroom is the safest place for students to learn responsible AI before the world expects them to already know it. So think about your own content area. Are you a math teacher, science teacher, social studies? What's one lesson that you teach every year that can become even more engaging with thoughtful AI integration? No. Just one. Just one. Sometimes one idea becomes the beginning of an entirely new approach. So, if that's the opportunity, how do teachers begin? Well, whenever educators ask me where to start, my answer is always the same. Start simple. One of the biggest misconceptions about artificial intelligence is that teachers have to become technology experts overnight. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I'd encourage you to do exactly the opposite. Start with one tool, one lesson, one classroom activity, one success. Build confidence before expanding upon that. Another best practice is verification. Always verify the information. AI can produce amazing work. It can also produce completely inaccurate information. That's why every AI response should be reviewed thoroughly through the lens of professional judgment. No, not everything on the internet is true. Protect student privacy. Be transparent with students. Model responsible use. And perhaps most importantly is teach students how to ask better questions. The quality of AI output is almost always determined by the quality of the prompt. That's a life skill. Learning how to communicate clearly, learning how to think critically, learning how to refine ideas. Those are educational outcomes, not just AI skills. Here's another momentum moment. The best AI strategy isn't using more tools, it's asking better questions. I'd like everyone to write down one classroom task you'll experiment with over the next few months. Don't overthink it. One lesson, one activity, one email, one prompt. Remember, momentum begins with one step. Let me show you what that could actually look like in a classroom. So everything we've discussed so far has been theoretical. Now let's make it very practical. I want you to walk through a simple English language arts lesson. Notice something important right away. The lesson doesn't begin with AI. It begins with student thinking. Students first write independently. Now that's intentional because their voice matters. Their ideas matter. Only after they've done the thinking do we then introduce AI. Students ask AI for suggestions, for organization, grammar, clarity. Notice that AI isn't writing the paper. It's acting like an editor. Then comes my favorite part. Get this. Students compare the AI's suggestions with their own thinking. Some suggestions they will probably accept, others they'll reject, or at least should. Why? Because learning isn't about blindly accepting answers. Learning is about evaluating information. That's critical thinking. Finally, students reflect. What helped? What didn't? What would they change? That's where the real learning happens. AI becomes part of the process, not the destination. Here's a momentum moment. The goal isn't better AI papers. The goal is better student writers. I'd like you to think about that one assignment that you already teach. Now, it's not a new one. It's an existing lesson that maybe you've taught before. Maybe, again, you teach it every year. How could AI strengthen the learning without replacing the thinking? That's where innovation begins. So now we've seen what responsible AI looks like in the classroom. So let's shift our attention to the leaders who helped make this vision possible. Now let's pause just for a moment. And everything we discussed in this section can be summarized in one sentence. Artificial intelligence should never replace learning. It should deepen learning. And that's exactly the responsibility of every educator. So far, we've talked about classrooms, we've talked about students, teachers. Now, I'd like to speak directly to the leaders in the room, because every successful initiative eventually rises or falls on leadership. And I've often said that culture doesn't happen by accident. Culture happens because someone intentionally creates it. I have tremendous respect for school administrators because leadership today is far more demanding than it's ever been. You're balancing student achievement, staff morale, attendance, budgets, compliance, safety, parent communication, and now artificial intelligence enters into the conversation. That's a lot, which is why I don't believe administrators need to become AI experts. They need to become AI leaders. There's a difference. An expert knows everything about the tool. A leader knows how to help people use the tool successfully. Even AI is changing in the blink of an eye. There's constantly new tools, new prompts, new this, new that for artificial intelligence. But your role is to establish vision, to communicate expectations, to create professional learning opportunities, to protect student privacy, to celebrate innovation, and perhaps most importantly, to remove fear. Whenever something new enters into education, and I've seen this far too often, people naturally become nervous. Teachers ask, "Am I expected to know all of this?" Parents ask, "Is my child safe?" Students ask, "What are the rules?" Well, leadership answers those questions before confusion becomes resistance. That's why one of my favorite leadership principles is this: clarity creates confidence. When expectations are clear, people move forward. When expectations are clear, people move forward confidently. When expectations are unclear, people stop moving altogether. That's what administrators provide. You provide direction, support, consistency, encouragement, because at the end of the day, leadership isn't about managing technology. It's about developing people. Here's another momentum moment. Great schools aren't built by great technology. They're built by great leaders who empower great teachers. I would like to go ahead and ask the administrators in the room, if your teachers walked into school tomorrow morning, would every one of them know your expectations regarding AI? If not, that's not a criticism. Don't worry. I'm not putting down bad marks for you. That's actually an opportunity, because leadership begins with communication. Everything begins with communication. Years ago, I learned something that has stayed with me throughout my entire career. People rarely resist change because they dislike change. They resist change because they're uncertain. They can't see the forward. They can't see what's happening. The moment leaders provide clarity, fear begins to disappear. Poof. Gone. No more. That principle applies just as much to AI as it does every other educational initiative on your campus right now. So if administrators create the culture, how do we know whether that culture is actually making a difference? Well, again, it goes back to measuring success. And this may just be the most overlooked part of any initiative. And that's measurement. How do we measure that success? Because if we don't define success, we'll never know whether making progress. When schools begin implementing artificial intelligence, one temptation is to measure the wrong things. How many AI accounts were created? How many teachers attended training? How many AI tools are available? Those are activity metrics. They're important, don't get me wrong, but they aren't success. That's not what measures success. Real success looks different. Teachers feel more confident. Students become stronger critical thinkers. Instruction becomes more engaging. Learning becomes more personalized. Parents feel informed. Whoa! Policies are followed consistently. That's success. Digital Momentum intentionally focuses on outcomes, not just implementation, because buying technology is easy. Yep, go down, throw $100 down, you got it for the whole entire year. I don't know if that's true, but changing learning is much harder. One of the questions I hope leaders ask regularly is this: is AI helping us become a better school? Not, are we using AI? Those are two totally different questions. The first question keeps students at the center. The second one keeps technology at the center. Remember, we all said this was based on relationships, building confidence. Relationships, building confidence. Remember, keep students at the center. And I personally believe that schools should always choose the first to keep students at the center. Here's another momentum moment. Don't measure how often AI is used. Measure how much learning has improved because it was used wisely. I'd like everyone to just think for a moment about one success indicator. Now, it could be something with, I don't know if you've got a goal or a plan, or it could be fitness or spiritual health, whatever. Doesn't matter. But I want you to think about one success indicator. If you returned 1 year from today, what evidence would convince you that AI implementation had truly been successful? Would it be higher engagement, teacher confidence, student creativity, academic growth? Choose one, because what we measure improves. Now, I've worked in radio, I've worked in education, leadership, all those things. But one thing every successful organization has in common is this: they measure what matters. Not because numbers tell the whole story, but because they help us celebrate growth and identity where we still need to improve. Schools are no different. So if we know what success actually looks like, the next question becomes, how do we actually get there? Well, we have to have a timeline. And I love this slide because it answers the question that I hear more than any other. Brian, where do we start? Well, remember I told you part of that answer earlier is to keep it simple. The next part of that is not all at once. It's not going to happen overnight. One of the biggest mistakes schools make with any initiative is trying to do everything immediately. It's like those wands we were waving earlier, those magic wands. Nope, ain't happening. It's not going to happen overnight. Momentum doesn't happen immediately. It grows. That's why I intentionally designed a 30, 60, 90-day roadmap to help you out. The first 30 days are all about learning. It's building awareness, establishing expectations, providing professional development, listening, asking questions. The first 30 days are about implementation. Teachers begin experimenting, leaders provide coaching, successes are celebrated, challenges are discussed openly, and then the final 30 days becomes refinement. What's working, what's not, what additional support is needed, where do we go next? Notice something important? Nowhere on this timeline do we rush. Because sustainable change always moves at the speed of trust. When teachers feel supported, innovation accelerates naturally. When they feel pressured, well, innovation slows way down. That's why implementation isn't really about artificial intelligence. It's about, there's that R word again, relationships. And relationships always take time. Here's another momentum moment. Momentum isn't created by moving faster. It's created by moving forward together. If your campus started tomorrow and they implement a new AI initiative, which phase would you be in? Okay, after we just went over those 30, 60, 90 days, or perhaps you're already further along than you actually realized. Either way, every journey begins with the next intentional step. I want you to notice something. We've spent the last hour talking about artificial intelligence, but I honestly hope that's not what you're thinking about right now. I hope that you're thinking about your teachers, your students, your campus, your future. Now, notice what was before each one of those. It said your teachers, your students, your campus, your future, because technology will continue changing. Leadership will always matter. Okay, my friends, we have covered a lot of ground today. We've explored artificial intelligence. We've discussed leadership. We've built a framework. We talked about those wonderful R words, responsibility and relationships, right? We've talked about classrooms, students, educators. Now, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. When I first started researching artificial intelligence and responsible AI in education, I thought this presentation was going to be about technology. But somewhere along the journey, it became something completely different. It became a presentation about people, about you. That's what education has always been about. Think about that greatest teacher that we've talked about today, that one you've had in your mind during this whole presentation. I doubt you remember every test they gave you, every harsh failing grade that you might have got. I'm sure you remember those successful moments when you get that A+. And I doubt you remember every assignment or every quiz, but I bet you remember how they made you feel. Especially those moments when they believed in you, they challenged you, they encouraged you, and they saw potential before you ever saw it in yourself. Artificial intelligence can generate lesson plans. It can organize information. It can summarize research. It can even write emails. But it cannot believe in a struggling student. Now, sure, it'll agree with you. It'll agree with you all day long. As a matter of fact, after extensive research on AI implementation, most oftentimes, 98% of the times, it will agree with you. Unless, again, you specify prompts that says, do not agree with me. Give me the pros and cons from a different stance. But one thing that AI cannot believe is in a struggling student. It cannot recognize fear in a child's eyes. It cannot celebrate a breakthrough. It cannot inspire hope. Only educators can do that. Hear that again. Only educators can inspire hope. That's why I've said throughout this presentation that technology should never replace the human heart of education. It should strengthen it. And as we leave today, artificial will continue evolving as a brand new as we leave today, artificial intelligence will continue evolving. As a matter of fact, we'll probably walk out in the next 30 minutes. We're going to have a brand new app and a brand new this and a brand new that. And of course, there'll be 50 new prompts on everything that you can do tomorrow. 5 years from now, the tools will be different. 10 years from now, many of the platforms we use today probably won't even exist. Poof, gone. But great teaching, great leadership, great relationships, those never go out of style. So my challenge to each one of us is this, and it's very simple. Do not be afraid of the future. Help shape it. Help lead it. Help model it. Help teach it responsibly. And remember, our greatest responsibility has never been preparing students for the next test. It's preparing them for the next chapter of their lives. If digital momentum accomplishes anything, it's my hope that it reminds us that innovation and humanity are not opposites. When they are guided by purpose, they become partners. And that's how we'll prepare today's learners for tomorrow's world. And as we close, I'll give you a momentum moment. Technology will continue changing, but great teachers will continue changing lives. I want you to do one more thing with me before we close. And I'd like everyone to do something with me. Close your laptop for just a moment. Set your phone down, if you haven't. Think about one student, just one. A student who needs encouragement, a student who's incredibly gifted, a student who's struggling, a student who doesn't yet realize how much potential they have. And now ask yourself this one question. How can I use artificial intelligence to become an even better educator for that student? Because if AI helps us do that, then we've used it exactly as it was intended. I want to leave you with this and something that's very personal to me. Over the course of my career, I've had the privilege of working in radio, television, live events, ministry, and now education. And of course, at many times, they were all together in one. Every one of those experiences taught me something different. But education taught me something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. People rarely remember every word we say. They remember how we made them feel. As educators, we have the incredible privilege of speaking hope into someone's future every single day. No technology will ever replace that. No algorithm will ever replicate that. No software will ever become that. Because education has always been and will always be a people business. And now our final momentum moment. Artificial intelligence may influence the future of education, but educators will always influence the future of students. Technology creates possibilities. Leadership creates momentum. Thank you. It's truly been an honor sharing digital momentum with you today. I thank you and cannot wait for you to reach your full potential. Before I leave, I simply want to say thank you. Thank you for choosing education. Thank you for believing in your students. Thank you for continuing to grow professionally. And thank you for investing your time today. My hope is that digital momentum doesn't end when this presentation ends today. I hope it begins a conversation about responsible innovation, ethical leadership, student success, and preparing the next generation for opportunities we can't even imagine. If today's presentation sparked one new idea, one meaningful conversation, or one small step toward responsible AI implementation, then I consider today a huge success. Thank you for allowing me to share this vision with you. May you continue to educate with purpose, lead with integrity, and keep moving forward together. God bless you, and thank you. Educate with purpose, equip with confidence, empower with vision, ensure with integrity, inspire with heart. People first, purpose always, technology with intention. Together, we create digital momentum.